Hey guys, today I want to take you through how you would build a basic financial model. Now, financial modeling is a skill that's needed in a lot of different professions, and the reality is that many people kind of struggle with how they're going to put together a financial model, but it doesn't have to be all that tricky or complicated. Certainly you can create very complex financial models, but the reality is that at the core, a basic financial model will often give you a great starting point to kind of understand what's going on with a business. So let me walk you through kind of a basic financial model that I built here, just looking at the hypothetical profit for a theoretical restaurant. Now, whenever I think about this kind of a financial model where I'm trying to understand the profit potential for a business or the revenue or trying to model something that doesn't exist yet, I usually start with just a theoretical set of expenses or costs and then a theoretical set of sales, right? So let's start with the cost side. So what kinds of pieces would we need if we were going to operate a restaurant? Well, certainly we'd have labor expenses. We'd also have rent from renting a space for the restaurant, utilities, marketing, supplies, that's all our food and things like that, our bank fees. In other words, we need to be able to accept credit cards, etc. We might have vehicle expenses. Maybe we're going to have a delivery van or something similar. And we'd also have some insurance expenses or insurance costs associated with the restaurant. Now, we can go through and kind of add these up. Labor is the section that probably most people struggle with the most. So, in this hypothetical model, we're going to say, okay, we've got 3 people that are required to make each meal. Okay, and that includes your cashiers, your cooks, your cleaners, all the behind-the-scenes people. Okay, and so let's say that we've got 12 meals done per 3 people hours or person hours. And essentially what we mean by that, if we just kind of take a look at this comment, essentially we mean that there's 3 people working 1 hour. How long is it going to, how many meals are they going to make? Well, in this case, we're assuming that they'll be able to make about 12 meals for those 3 people in 1 hour. In other words, each person spends about 15 minutes on a meal here. Okay? Now, if we then assume that the typical person is working at $15 per hour, and we have to pay them benefits at 1.2 times, well, what do we get here? Well, we're going to tie this to our number of meals that we think we need to produce, okay? So, what have we done? Well, let me go back and take a look at this after we get to the revenue side. Next, for the rest of these expenses, they're fairly straightforward, right? Our rent, we might say, just hazarding a guess, might be $6,000 for the space per month. Our utilities might be $1,000 a month. We might spend $1,000 on marketing. Our food or supplies are also going to be tied to the number of meals we sell. So again, we'll revisit this in a minute. Next, we've got our bank fees. Again, that'll be tied to the level of revenue that we do, but it might typically expect that we're going to spend, say, 3% of our revenues in the form of credit card transaction fees and things like that. And we're dividing by 12 because we're trying to come up with kind of a monthly figure. Our vehicle expense, we might say, is going to be $800 per month, and insurance might be, as an example, $15,000 a year, divided by 12 months is $1,250 per month. And we can go through and kind of understand what those costs are as a percentage of our total expenses by just dividing each of these individual expenses by the sum of the total expenses. So let's look at the revenue side of the coin now. Okay, well, let's pretend that the average check is $22. And based on this, we're really talking about kind of a fast casual restaurant here. Think something like a Panera Bread as an example. How much do we think the average person is going to spend going into Panera? Well, the average person walking in the door might be buying food for, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 people. So maybe they're going to spend $22 to $25, let's just say. We'll bump the numbers up to 25. And that's the nice thing about a good financial model is we can kind of change those numbers dynamically as we go. Well, now, how many checks are we going to do per week? Well, that's going to depend on the number of customers we think we'll have each weekday and the number of customers per weekend day. So, how many customers might we see in a typical weekday? Well, just hazarding a guess, if we go into a Panera, how busy is it? Well, semi-busy. There's probably a bunch of people in there, but it's not like the place is packed and there's a line out the door usually. There could be, if it's a really popular location. But, let's say 70 customers a day seems like a reasonable figure. And then on weekends, where people aren't working and they have more free time, etc., maybe you're more likely to get customers coming out to eat. So we might have 120 customers on this weekday. All right. Now, to figure out our revenue then, we're going to have to determine our checks per week. So checks per week are based on 2 weekdays and 2 weekend days and 5 weekdays during the week. So that gives us 590 checks per week at $25 per check. And then we've got 52 weeks in the year. So now we have annual revenues in this case of $767,000. Now we need to figure out our expenses. So we're going to assume if there's 590 checks per week, how many customers can the average employee do? These figures down here are assumptions that we're making about productivity, right? So we'll often see these highlighted in green in some financial models. So the average number of customers per employee hour might be 12. That's what we saw before, right? We have 3 people working at a time, and they can handle about 12 customers an hour. Our wages per hour, we're assuming, are about 15. We've got 3 people required to make each meal. So maybe this is a cashier and 2 cooks as an example. And then we've got taxes and benefits representing about 20% of total wages. And then we're assuming that food maybe costs about 35% of the value of the meal. So getting a sandwich together, whatever, might cost about, if the cost of the sandwich is $10 on the menu, maybe we need $3.50 worth of ingredients, right? We could just base this on a trip to the grocery store. So we take all of these figures, 3 people per meal, times $15 per person, times the number of meals we're producing divided by the number of customers per hour, and this gives us our labor cost for 1 week. Now, we want to figure out what the labor cost is for a whole month. So that's going to give us, we're going to need to multiply this by 4.25, and that tells us our labor cost in this model is $11,284. And then our supplies are based on the number of customers that we're serving per week and the cost of the food that they're buying. So supplies are our biggest expense, unsurprising for a restaurant. So in this particular model, we've got total expenses of $542,000. Now, how many employees do we need here? Well, at 590 checks per week and 12 customers being served per employee hour, that is per 1 hour for the 3 employees, we need just under 5 employees. So we probably change that to 5. We're not going to be able to hire 0.92 employees, obviously. But this is how you can go through and build a basic Excel financial model. Pretty neat, right? If you're interested in learning how to build this kind of model and more sophisticated models for use in business, I recommend you check out my Excel for Financial Models course, which you can find in the description link down below. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.